Hello, and welcome to Juva Life's CEO livestream. We're excited to share some corporate updates and other information with you. Before we begin, please be advised that the following webcast contains forward-looking statements relating to future events or the future financial performance of the company. These forward-looking statements involve risks and uncertainties which may cause actual results to differ materially from those anticipated in these statements based on a number of factors. The forward-looking statements are made as of the date of this webcast, and the company undertakes no obligation to update such forward-looking statements except as required by law. And now, it's my pleasure to introduce Juva Life's CEO, founder, and chairman of the board, Doug Chloupek.
Hi, all. Well, thanks for joining us round two. So we filmed this live starting exactly at 5:30 just a little bit ago, and it seems that there was a technical difficulty. So I apologize for those of you who have, one, been sitting here waiting for a little bit, and two, those who may have to see this a day late, apologize. We just got done doing this whole film and realized that none of it recorded, unfortunately. So fingers crossed this is working for take two. And with that said, let's jump into it. Thank you for those who hung around. I think there's still quite a number on here. I think we've lost a few from earlier, but hopefully they'll still see the update. So thank you for those joining us today. With that said, go figure. Gotta love technology. A year worth of Zoom and all the other stuff. And here we are talking to everybody through Zoom, but you didn't hear us the first time. So I'm glad we're here the second time. Today's discussion was really going to be an overview of Juva, an overview of our general business, the use of funds, and how we've utilized some of the investment that's come in to date. We're going to take a little tour of our facilities, Stockton, Hayward, Redwood City, and then answer a number of questions that have come in from our shareholders. Now, before I go and really dive into really the meat of our meeting here, is I wanted to make sure that we addressed a few of the underlying questions that have been really reoccurring. Many of these questions that have been reoccurring have revolved around the DRS statements. How do we deposit them? How do we download them? What to do with the DRS statements, warrants, and a few of those other related questions. The most appropriate person that would address all of that would be our CFO, Mr. Matt Lee here at Juva. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Matt and let him address those.
Hi, everyone. Firstly, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. My name is Matthew Lee, and I'm the CFO of Juva Life. I'll be addressing our DRS issues and then fielding some questions, so let's get into it. In order to sell your shares, you need to first contact a broker. Many of you have been trying to deposit with large investment banks with little to no luck, mostly no luck. It's worth noting that larger investment banks have internal restrictions on depositing cannabis-related securities below a certain market capitalization. We recommend a brokerage house that specializes in the deposit and sale of small cap securities. One such broker is Glendale Securities. They assisted us with our listing on the OTC. And they also confirmed they will assist on this matter as well. They will accept and deposit Juva Life shares. Please keep in mind there will be registration and compliance fees associated with the setup of your accounts. Once you've retained a broker, you will have to have the legend on your DRS statement removed before you can sell your shares. This isn't specific to Juva Life. All cross-border companies have this requirement. Once the Canadian restrictive legend is removed, if you're a U.S. person, you may still be subject to further compliance with U.S. state securities laws. This may take time and may require an opinion of counsel to have the U.S. legend removed before you sell your shares. Most brokers are very familiar with this process or this requirement and will be able to assist you with the removal of that legend and the legal opinion. Hopefully this clears up a few of the comments and questions. Speaking of questions, let's get into it. Why is it so difficult to transfer the DRS to your broker accounts? So like I mentioned, larger investment banks have internal restrictions based on the type of company, the market cap of that company. Again, please reach out to a smaller brokerage house that specializes in the deposit and sale of small cap securities. How long will the transfer agent hold my shares? So Olympia will maintain our records until they're no longer our transfer agent. We have no plans to move from them at this time. I'm told by my bank that Olympia Trust Company was working on trying to get DTC approval. What is the status? So we've been DTC approved for quite some time now, but more recently we've been approved for DTC Fast Track, which allows for a quicker, more efficient deposit process. So we're very pleased with that. What is the last day the rights of a warrant can be executed? So this is a difficult question because we have multiple classes of warrants. You would have to refer to your warrant certificate, which details out the expiry date. The expiry date on your warrant certificate is the last day that you can exercise your warrants. Which stock exchanges do we trade on? We trade on the CSE in Canada, the OTC in the US, and the Frankfurt Exchange in Germany. Okay, that's all for me. Again, thank you for your questions and thank you for joining us today. Doug, I will pass it back to you.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate you getting those answers. I know we'll have some shareholders who are definitely interested in getting those questions addressed, so appreciate you very much. Now we're going to dive into, kind of this general update. Is we want to talk a little bit about the Juva business model. So the Juva business model was always built, has always been, and continues to be a two-pronged approach. On one arm, we're a cannabis company with cultivation, delivery, retail, manufacturing, and distribution of our products through the state of California through licensed distributors. On the other side of our business, it's really the research and development which is really the real mission of Juva, to research what, how, why, and can we repeat it in humans using cannabinoid therapies, using clinical research, Western IRB approved research protocols in humans, and standard FDA approved processes that are used to develop pharmaceutical drugs. And how do we combine those together to create meaningful value? So as we're going to dig in, we're going to do a little overview. Before we get to doing a little sightseeing of our facilities, let's talk about what those facilities just are in general. So first, we have our Stockton facility. In Stockton, we generally call that San Juan. The Stockton facility is our central hub of Juva's cultivation. That facility is also licensed for cultivation, delivery, distribution, and manufacturing. We had a second building out in Stockton, which was called our Navy Drive location. As you may have noticed in a recent press release, we recently sold Navy Drive, and we're going to touch on that in just a little bit. Then we have our Hayward location. Hayward is really our campus. We have two different buildings. We call them our Clawwitter and Enterprise building. And sandwiched in between them, we have a series of greenhouses. The Hayward campus is a licensed micro business. The micro business allows us to do manufacturing, research and development, chemistry and extraction in the laboratory, delivery to consumer, retail stores, well, a small retail storefront there, distribution, and cultivation in the greenhouses. In addition to that, we have our Redwood City location. Redwood City was our first to revenue and operational subsidiary, which was our delivery business, which was operational a little over a year and a half ago. And then we have what is anticipated to be one of our flagship retail stores. This is still a work in process. The applications have been submitted. It's a very competitive process, but that's for a brick and mortar retail store in downtown Redwood City, literally in a prime location, right across from Starbucks, right down the street from the Little Fox Theater. We're very excited for the opportunity to open a retail store in Redwood City. Now, everybody loves show and tell. Everybody loves to see what's under the hood. So why don't we do a little look under the Juva hood and see what we've been up to for the last 2+ years since we've had a lot of construction. We've deployed a lot of shareholder funds through that construction, and we're now just getting to the point of seeing real growth and real revenue that are going to start coming from these facilities. So let's jump right in. This first facility here is our Stockton facility. This is what we call San Juan. The San Juan facility, when we took it over, was, in all honesty, it was a pretty dilapidated building. It had a lot of rot on the front of it that we didn't know about. So we had to completely redo the entire front facade of the building with a new entryway. Well, in that same vein, the back of the building, the west side, also had a lot of rot. We had to completely remove the entire west end of the building, rebuild completely from the ground all the way up. What it left us with was a fully secure, safe building for our employees to be in and for us to cultivate really high-end cannabis. In order to do so, you need a lot of HVAC. You'll start noticing here HVAC and a lot of underground work that we did to support the HVAC, our generators. This is all for the underground. And now we start landing some of those HVAC equipment. You'll see them starting to get set on some of the curbs. To that effect, we have 360 tons of heating and air conditioning. You see the monster ducts on top of the ceiling there, the roof of the building. And we started laying some of the concrete pads, some of the foundation work to access these. And now you see some of the ducting that starts getting put into this facility. I have to say the craftsmanship at this facility is bar none. It's actually, if ductwork and pipes could be pretty, it's pretty ductwork and pipes. Let's pause right here. What's really interesting about this facility is we power the entire facility using natural gas powered generators. So some might say, who cares? What's so unique about that? We happen to live in California, the land of rolling blackouts. With that said, Stockton had a number of blackouts last year. In a production cultivation facility, if you have blackouts for more than, say, 24 to 48 hours, which was current and frequent in the California area, you could have total crop devastation. You could force your crops to actually hermaphrodite, which ruins the sellability of that crop. You're talking potentially millions of dollars in loss for each rolling blackout at a fully functional facility. By having the generators like these, natural gas powered, we have 2 in place, a third is on order, and space for 2 more. So 5 total planned 350 kilowatt natural gas powered generators. We'll never have a power outage due to PG&E power outage. We only use PG&E as a backup if there's ever an issue with the generator. And we're able to save roughly 50% on our monthly utilities due to the cost of gas compared to PG&E. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide here. So now we're inside the building. When we're inside the building, we've done all of our trench work. We're starting to hang all of our different trusses and joists, and those are what will support the wall paneling for our refrigeration wall panels. Now, this facility is a little over 300 feet long, as you can tell from this really long hallway with these refrigeration wall panels on each side. At the end of that hallway is kind of the heart, which is the plumbing, the irrigation, and now we're starting to connect those. This is the Anderson injection irrigation. We have the plumbing that goes to each of the respective rooms. Again, I take great pride in this. Our craftsmanship that our trades did, just great job. And it all works, which is even better. You have our water filtration, water storage, water mixing. All of these stuff feeds into this. This is a flower room before it was fully outfitted, just with the T-bar going in, and now the unistrut, hanging the lights, the floors are done, plumbing's done. After that, we put in the benches. These benches are what allow 50 to 55 foot long, couple thousand pounds to slide seamlessly. On top of those benches goes the irrigation and our rock wool cubes. These are the cuttings or clones that we take from the mother plants. We put those into rock wool slabs, root them, as you see right here on our rooting trays. And from there, those get planted back into the rock wool cubes. You're now looking at the same room that's now full of vegetative plants, which are now growing, to then move to our flower room. And this is the start of flower, if you've noticed a little change in those plants. This is one of our cultivation technicians here who's starting to do some plant work preemptive to our flowering cycle. And now you're a couple weeks out from harvest with some of our very first cannabis. This was an early little snip that we took of a few strains so that we could get some photos. And then once those go through the dry process, they'll end up over into the trim room. In the trim room, they'll go through a machine trim and then to a long conveyor where they are hand polished so that you get a really beautiful flower that's then separated and sorted. And you have a little macro photo of one of our trichomes. From the Stockton facility, if we move west, we'll end up at our Hayward facility that I touched on earlier. That was the former cancer research institution that we were so lucky to take over. At that facility, unfortunately, it sat a little dilapidated, got a little run down, and it's been a few years, so we've been going through the permit process and not allowed to really start real construction. We are right around the corner from that, and we're going to touch on the status of that facility in just a few minutes on some of the question and answer. But if we go to the next slide, you'll see the renderings of what Hayward, the new front facade, we'll have new entryway, we'll have a new employee area, and the entire interior of the facility, with the exception of the Class 5, $5 million Class 5 clean room that is actually really great and intact, has been completely demolished, and it's ready for the next phase to build out our manufacturing, distribution, delivery, the retail store, and then we have our 2 existing greenhouses that are being remodeled with the addition of a third. And then from Hayward, if we were to jump right over the bridge, we'll end up into Redwood City. As we previously discussed, Redwood City is where we have our operational delivery business, which has had great response from the city of Redwood City and the community as a whole. And this is our actual building, real photo of our facility in Redwood City as our soon-to-be, fingers crossed, new retail store. This is in the downtown, right across from Starbucks, right next to the Little Fox Theater. We've gone through the first phase and are now moving into the second phase of the application review process. This is a highly competitive process, and we are hopeful that we will win one of the 6 coveted awards to operate. And this is an internal flow of rendering of what the facility will start to look like once it becomes operational. And I believe the next photo gives a little insight of artistic centerpiece and kind of the general feel. The facility is built and will be built to be warm, inviting to the general public, a knowledge and learning center where not just someone looking for cannabis, but someone looking for a way to heal themselves using alternative therapeutics can come, learn, be educated, and get all of those questions answered and hopefully leave with some relief. And speaking about questions, let's dive right into what some of those questions are. We've had a lot of them that came in. We tried to consolidate them as best as we could. So let's just jump right into those. The first question was, why was the second facility sold? This seems to be like a step back and not an aggressive growth strategy. Well, to be perfectly honest, this was an underutilized asset. We had refined our mission to understand that we didn't need as much indoor cultivation as we initially thought we did. And between the carry cost of the facility, the build out cost of what it was expected, we were able to conserve that cash, sell the facility for over $1 million, bring that revenue back into the company and utilize that for longer sustained growth to really move the needle on our true mission, which is the research and the chemistry side to create meaningful long-term value. The next was, do you offer tours of your facilities? Well, not technically, but hopefully what we just did gave you a little bit of an insight into the facility to see how Juva's deployed some of the funds we've raised to date and what's really happening behind the scenes at Juva. I look forward, as long as this is a successful one. Granted, we did have to film this twice today, had some technical difficulties, but assuming this is successful and well received, we'll look forward to doing these more often and sharing more updates as they continue to come. What was the next one here? What was the status of the Hayward facility? Well, we started doing the Hayward facility with the permitting process before Juva was even Juva. That started back in early 2018. So this has been a long road. This was not a quick turn to get Hayward operational. There's been a number of delays which have come directly from the city's side, nothing to do with Juva, in part due to COVID and in part just to the city's processes. But to that end, we have completed most of the large hurdles. Those were completing the CUP process, the fence permitting process, the sprinkler and alternative means of fire protection. All of those have been completed, and all of those had to be completed before the city would accept our first round of construction documents. Those documents are currently in process of being designed. Those are the MEP and architectural drawings for our first phase of construction. We're expected to submit those within 6 weeks from today. The city, fingers crossed with delays, won't take more than 6 to 8 weeks to process and turn around, and we'll start construction anticipated in early to mid-August, which would then put us for first phase in just the lab, which is really the core mission to get it operational as soon as possible. We're targeted at sometime in late October to early November. Again, this is barring any delays from the city, but those are our targeted times as of right now. The next question was, how much has been harvested to date? 1. We're extremely excited about the 1. Took us a number of years to get here. We had our first harvest as announced about a week and a half ago. That harvest has since been dried, and it is about 3/4 of the way through its trim process right now. Good note on that is the second harvest is just about to come down. That harvest is going to be getting cropped later this week and into early next week, and will be ready to go through its trim and subsequently be sold in roughly about a month when it moves its way through the whole process. In that same vein was, how many harvests are you planning per room per year? Well, at full capacity, a room would do roughly 6 harvests per year. We have 3 rooms, 2 rooms fully built that we've now harvested or are in process of harvesting. A 3rd room is built and is getting ready to have plants go in. When all 5 rooms are completed, we expect to have 30 harvests per year is our target number. Next question is, how is Juva going to compete and get results against the giants like Tilray? I think the short answer is we're not. Juva is not looking to compete with the giant MSOs or global distributors in the cannabis sector. As I earlier mentioned, Juva is really on a 2-pronged approach. The research and development is really the stronghold and the mission of Juva. The cannabis side of the business is what creates the infrastructure and the revenue stream to support that true mission. So it'd be kind of similar to saying, how is Tesla and Apple going to compete? Well, they're both technology companies. They're both in a technology space, but they have very different business models and they operate very, very differently, as does Juva and most of the large MSOs. The next question went right into the research side of what illnesses or diseases are we researching? So we have a patient research registry, which has been approved by the Western Institutional Review Board for up to 2,000 patients. That research registry is approved for chronic pain, neuropathic pain, sleeplessness, poor appetite, anxiety, menopausal symptoms, nausea, and inflammation. This question really, I got really happy when I saw this one. It said, what are your research results up to date? So there's a lot that we cannot disclose as of right now, but what I can disclose is we have identified a class of compounds with potential value for therapeutics. Those are now being profiled for different therapeutic applications. We're expecting to have the results of those released within the next 90 days. I'm so excited to be able to say that, and I can't wait to see what the near future holds for us. The next question was, is anyone from the big pharma companies interested in what you've achieved so far? I think the short answer to that is we're a little early. Their interest is going to come from the research and development, from the patient-reported outcome and the chemistry, how those things combined into the patent protection portfolio that has the potential to accelerate drug development. With those said, it's going to be in the coming months when we start really materializing real value out of the research and chemistry arm. That's the direction that the interest would come from. And then the next was, if you decide to sell Juva to a big pharma company, what may happen to your business model? Well, it's kind of in the same vein that we expect that an acquisition would occur based on the human research data and the chemistry data, along with the patent portfolio that we've put together. The hope is that the acquiring company, when and if Juva is acquired, which is our goal, that the acquiring company would utilize that as a launch pad to accelerate the next phase of growth and development with that portfolio. And then we had, what is your advantage by comparison with other pharmaceutical companies? This is an interesting question, which goes to the core of how we designed Juva from the very beginning. We live in this interesting world in between FDA-regulated pharmaceutical companies, state-regulated cannabis companies, patient-reported researchers doing in-human research. Because of living in this interesting world and not receiving government funds or grant money, we're not relying on that grant money to dictate how we do our research. We're not determined or pre-required to gather the cannabinoids in cannabis from the FDA licensed farm. We can get products into humans exponentially quicker because we have the safety data and the safety protocols to do so. And we're able to do this under the state law and state purview and do our work in laboratories. So it's this very interesting model of working in between and working with the regulations currently in place that allow us to be very nimble in ways that many pharmaceutical, life science, and many cannabis companies cannot. The next question was, is your primary objective to have your company acquired by another company or to grow into a long-term, multi-state, leading world company? Our goal is very straightforward: to be acquired. We're taking the necessary steps needed today and have been to create meaningful data in both the chemistry and the patient research side while having this mass infrastructure of cannabis to support that. And what's the next one here? How has your position on this changed over time? Simple answer: it hasn't. We've stayed laser focused. The only thing that has changed is we have refined our mission, honed the steps needed to get to our end goal in the shortest period of time, conserving as much revenue as possible. And then the last question that we have here is, how do we stay in touch with what's happening in the company? Easiest way would be to go to our website. You can put your information in down at the bottom and be added to our email list. You can also set a Google alert for Juva Life, and you can follow us on either Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, pretty much any of the social media channels there. And if there was any open questions, outstanding questions, anything that you felt wasn't addressed today or just had something to reach out, feel free to reach to our investor relations team at inquiries@juvalife.com. And I'd like to say, even though we had a little glitch in starting on the early part, I hope you found this webinar informative. I hope that this gave a little vote of confidence to the investment that you've done and hung in there with us while we've gone through construction and are really getting to the exciting phase of Juva Life. On behalf of myself, the employees, the board, I'd like to thank you for your support in Juva Life, and I wish you a great evening.